Hello, thank you for joining us today and welcome to all of you. We've got a conversation today that I hope you'll find clarifying and illuminating in many different ways. This is in response to a recent question. So thank you for asking the question. And before we launch into some discussion today, what I want to invite you all to do is ask questions if you've got them. That is part of the reason why this thread of videos exists, so that you can get your questions answered. So please feel welcome to leave them here in the comment thread right here on YouTube. And I am always willing to take a particular subject and address it in a standalone video. So today is just such an occasion. Thank you again for asking the question. It relates to ego and consciousness, and I've entitled this discussion Ego and the Illusion of Consciousness, which we'll get to in a few moments. The question is a good one. It's one that we all ask on the path, and it's, how did this ego individuation, this ego dream, this supposed thing happen in the first place? How did this come about? And then you might go on to ask another really good question. Why did all of this appear to happen? What is the purpose behind all of this? Why do I keep doing the same things over and over again and experiencing the exact same result, suffering, i.e., not the peace of God? What the hell? Right? All of these strings of questions are excellent. I mean, they're excellent. They're quite natural on the path. And, well, predictably enough, A Course in Miracles has a lot to say about them. It really does, because this is a natural part of our awakening. I mean, we've got to question everything. At the introduction to the workbook for students here in the course, Jesus invites us to question. Yeah, I love this. I love it. It's cool. Well, there you go. It's cool because we're invited to question and to keep questioning and not to stop and to question the very foundations of everything we now believe. And don't stop until you've questioned the very foundations of everything you now believe. Feeling skeptical? Good. Don't stop at just questioning this image on your screen. That would ultimately be to do yourself a great disservice. Keep questioning everything. Don't stop at just questioning this course. Question the very foundations of everything you now believe. Our perception of ourselves, of the world, is not right. It is heavily askew and delusional. This course is about the clarifying of our perception. We don't see things as they are. We see ourselves as individual human beings. We see the outer edges of this thing that you're looking at right here, which, by the way, is a pixelated image on your screen. We see this physical body as us. We call it me. We call it I. We use first-person pronouns for this thing that is 80% water and doesn't last. I mean, it doesn't. It's fallible and finite and changes constantly. Yet we mistake this to be us. There is no separation. Period. There is no separation of any kind. So because we've been conditioned to see ourselves as individuals, we see everyone else also as an individual ego, and we appear to be competing with one another. which is wholly and completely empty and unnecessary. And you are well aware of that because you're interested in spirituality. So at some point, you have entertained the thought that, oh man, there's got to be something more to it than just this. Oh, of course there is. You know it. Of course there is. So here you are. And for that, I thank you, not just for tuning in on this channel, which of course you're always welcome to do. I'd be remiss if I said otherwise. But what's really important is your dedication and commitment to your spiritual practice. I often say that because it is important. So thank you. Let's talk about the ego. How did the ego arise? It didn't. When did it arise? Never. How did it arise? It never arose. It is nothing. There is no separation of any kind. So while it's quite natural for us with our intellectual thinking mind to ponder such questions as when did this arise? How did this arise? It never arose. That's the answer. It's nothing. We're invited to let that intellectual, rational thinking mind rest and let it go. Let it go. We're invited to do that. That's one of the things on the spiritual path that we find so incredibly difficult to do. And that makes perfect sense here in the world because we've been conditioned to train and sharpen this intellectual thinking mind. We send it to school, sometimes for years or decades. We send it to go out and win these expensive things called graduate degrees. If you have one of those, I do. You may not, it doesn't make any difference. I mean, it makes absolutely no difference whatsoever because this intellectual, rational thinking mind may get us things here in the world like status, social status, like a fancy title, like a job, a career, a house, fancy cars, things like that. But here on the spiritual path, we find that this mind that we've trained so heavily needs to just let all of this division and subdivision go. It's not helping us because this intellectual, rational thinking mind, we call it rational, it's kind of irrational when you think about it. In fact, it's completely diluted what we do, which we take reality and we parse it into multiple component parts. We separate. We draw distinctions and divisions amongst ourselves and other people based on nation state, based on ethnic group, religious or spiritual preference or lack thereof, based on our height, weight, our appearance, the color of our skin, everything. We categorize, subcategorize, divide and subdivide, and we keep categorizing and subcategorizing and dividing and subdividing, and we feel cool with it because it's just what we're trained to do. And what happens with all of these made up artificial categories, we judge them. We judge some as better than others, more desirable, hotter, sexier, superior, smarter, dumber, whatever. We make one judgment after another, all of them a complete illusion. There is no separation of any kind. This is an idea that this highly trained scalpel-like thinking mind finds heavily threatening. Good, let it. You have help, loving help on this path from your inner teacher. And then you also have help in the form of human teachers that look something like this or something else, right? When something lands for you, by the way, it's your inner teacher that's speaking. That's who's speaking to you right now. That's why you turned this video on. You were listening to our inner teacher who said, this is going to pop up in your YouTube feed. Ooh, you know that Course in Miracles book that's been sitting on your shelf for decades? Check this out. Right? It's that voice. That's our inner teacher. This is the voice that has us on the spiritual path and interested in this material in the first place, because we all know there's a lot of other content out there. So in response, simple response to when did the ego originate? Never. No, there is no ego. It's nothing. So we're invited to repeat that idea until we begin to accept it, which is not at first easy for this thinking mind to do. But let the thought that the ego is nothing replace the thought that it's everything, because it is nothing. Do a 180 in your mind and hold on to the new thought from your inner teacher. What we're doing is we're replacing one thought system with another completely. What we then see and experience will be very different. Truth is simple. Our intellect, our highly trained, razor-like, scalpel-like, incisive intellect can be given simple ideas. It can be pointed to the truth. That's what's going on right now. We're being pointed to the truth. That's all any teacher can do, is point. There is no ego. It never arose. There is only perfect oneness. So the question also involves some statements and a quotation from Dr. Eckhart Tolle that is very, very interesting. It involves the notion of consciousness. So I'd like to say a few words about this. Consciousness is a term that's very popular in world spirituality, isn't it? I mean, you see it in many different publications, on many people's social media feeds. You read about it in books. People talk about it all of the time, and it's considered sexy in world spirituality, and it's highly elevated. So, enter A Course in Miracles, because again, this video series is about A Course in Miracles. It's a presentation of non-duality, which of course can only be pointed to. Words are simply symbols after all. We can only point to the truth. Yet truth can be experienced. And that's how we do it. We experience our oneness with God. Consciousness in A Course in Miracles is known as the domain of the ego. Jesus, in fact, says consciousness can rightly be seen as the domain of the ego. So the world elevates it. Of course it does. It's the domain of the ego. What do we mean by that? It's dualistic by its very nature. Consciousness involves a subject and an object, a split, a separation. Remember, there is no separation of any kind. There is no thing to be conscious of. This very term, this very idea of consciousness implies subject-object duality. So in the quote from Eckhart Tolle, there's a sentence that's absolutely true. You cannot become an object to yourself. There is no object. There is only perfect oneness. An object is something that we place outside of ourselves. Which is impossible. There is nothing outside you. Remember, there's only perfect oneness. Simple idea that we repeat over and over and over and over and over again. Because the magnitude of it needs to be taken in. We've got to accept this for ourselves. What helps us? Well, entertaining the idea, but our moment to moment practice of true forgiveness is what really helps us. And our relationship with our inner teacher is what really helps us. We do our forgiveness work, practice, under the guidance of our inner teacher in the first place. So consciousness is the domain of the ego. There is no thing to be conscious of. There is only our experience of perfect oneness. So while we don't appear to be experiencing it, we tune in to videos like this. We tune in to spiritual teachers in whatever form they may appear, in whatever tradition they may espouse, or none at all, or an amalgamation of many. It absolutely makes no difference. All roads lead to God in the end. So a question that we have here, and it's especially relevant here in the 21st century, which is actually very, very cool, because every spiritual tradition that is extant in the world is available, and information on that tradition is available at the click of a mouse. We can access information on anything. So we also face a possibly bewildering amount of choices. So not everybody is going to go in for this simple message from this course. They're not going to appear to do it in this lifetime, which accounts for the multiple traditions that exist in the world. They all lead to God in the end. So here you are. So as a course student, or one that's interested in studying this course, we have a choice. How quickly do we want to wake up? Do we want the peace of God and nothing else? We're invited not to cherish illusions and want them at the expense of truth. How much do we cherish them? Well, that's a question that we ourselves can answer only for ourselves. I mean, this is food for thought for all of us. So to the extent that an idea helps you along the way, fantastic, use it. Here in the course, consciousness is not elevated. Like the ego, it's nothing. It's nothing. There is no split. There is no dualistic split. There is no separation of any kind. So to the extent that any idea that is not espoused in the course helps you, good. That's fantastic. We're all invited to use them if they help us, because there are certain places that we appear to hit here on the path where we may find that we're not ready to accept an idea, or we're not ready for whatever reason to entertain an idea. And that's perfectly okay. And along the way, there is a tremendous struggle sometimes in our own mind. Well, where else would it be? Right? with this intellect, with this scalpel like eraser that won't accept truth just as it is, thinking that it's got to be intellectually understood. We're invited to leave that behind. It's simple. The truth is simple. We create all the complications ourselves. So to the extent that you're able to let one or two little complications go, excellent. It's the same as being able to forgive yourself for spilling coffee on your pants, even if today you're not ready to forgive your ex or your abusive former partner or a historical dictator or a current dictator or something like that. We do what we're able to do. And our inner teacher knows what we're able to do. So that's what's presented to us right here in the present moment. So I hope that this conversation and all of them are helpful in clarifying things. This course points us to truth. It just says, here, there is no separation of any kind. Allow this to permeate your mind. And then the Holy Spirit says, I'll help when you're ready. I'm waiting. And he is. Right? The Holy Spirit is not some outside force. It's part of our mind. This is the part of our mind that speaks truly, that will guide us if only we let it. So all of this is a practice of letting go of all of our concepts of who and what we are, of who and what our brother is and what the world is, because it is not. There is no world. Central teaching of this course. If there is only perfect oneness, there's no world. Because to imply that there's a world implies that there's something outside of it. Other worlds, other planets, other spinning balls of rock, other solar systems, galaxies, universes, etc., etc. There is only perfect oneness. So we're invited to allow that idea. So to the extent that you can today, I invite you to do that. And when you encounter resistance, that is an opportunity to forgive. Forgive the intellectual thinking mind. Forgive the world. Forgive yourself for dreaming it. Forgive the object of your forgiveness, right? Forgiveness is an illusion. It is. In truth, there's only perfect oneness. So there's nothing to forgive, nor anyone else to forgive. The reason forgiveness, although an illusion, is the central focal point of our practice in A Course in Miracles. It is the one illusion that leads to the truth, because it does not carry any untruth with it. True forgiveness overlooks the separation. It never occurred, after all. So each act of true forgiveness is acknowledging things as they are. When our forgiveness is complete, truth dawns of itself. That's awakening. So every act of forgiveness brings it that much closer. Because deep down, we all want that. We all want the peace of God, even if we deny that that's what we want. That's why we're interested in this material. So it may be that there are people in your life that are not interested in this at all. So be it, right? You are. And you can only control what you do and say and think right now in the present moment. So I invite you to think with your inner teacher. In other words, to let him run the whole show. You might be real glad you did. Okay, so thank you as always for tuning in. Once again, thank you for this particular question, and I hope that it has been helpful in at least clarifying some parts of this, at least. That's what I'm here for. That's what any of us is here for, actually. So if you have questions or comments, please feel welcome to leave them. And if you have not yet subscribed, I invite you to do so. This arrow in the corner of your screen is a prompt. When you click or hover over that, you'll be invited to join us. And I hope that you'll do that. These conversations happen several times a week. And as we do today, I'm more than happy to pause our journey through the text of A Course in Miracles to have a specific focal point discussion, something focused on something that's coming up for you. So if you've got those questions, please feel welcome to leave them here, and I will see you next time.